Chapter 9. Jessica, before you leave, please stop by my office, Bill said as he quickly popped his head in her office door. Before she could answer, he was gone. She turned back to her computer screen and continued to pretend that she was working. The events of the weekend were running through her mind. She had spent a sleepless night on Saturday, her body aching with unmet desires. Sunday, she had gone to the house to help David and found him, well, not exactly cool to her but certainly refrained. He had been his usual focused self, completing the wiring in the main floor. There had been a small celebration as he hooked the first floor into the main breaker box and turned it on. Jessica and David then got down to some more heavy work, installing drywall in the entranceway. She was amazed at his carpentry skills, which were just as good as most professionals she had seen. It runs in the family, David said with a smile. My grandfather was a carpenter, best I ever saw. When I was a kid, I used to spend my summers with him, helping out with little jobs and mostly making a mess. As I got older, he started to teach me how to do things, how to safely handle tools, how to measure angles, and how important it is to get the electrical systems and plumbing done right. When I got into my teens, I couldn't wait until it was summer or vacations so I could go out to whatever job site that he was working on to get my hands dirty. Does your father do any hands-on work himself? Jessica asked. David turned back to the wall that he was working on and talked as he hammered. No, not anymore. He helped my grandpa when he was younger, too, but he got the bug for designing buildings. Grandpa was proud of my dad when he decided to be an architect, and while Dad isn't the most talented designer in the world, he is a really good salesman for his firm. He was all too eager for me to learn the basic skills from Grandpa. David continued. He thought it would make me a better architect. There was never any question about me doing anything else, at least not to Dad. Jessica helped David line up the next piece of drywall and thought about what he said. So you don't want to be an architect? David stopped and considered for a moment. I like some of what I do. I like being a part of building something. I just wish. You wish what? Well, I wish that I were doing something that really mattered. The buildings we put up are good, functional, strong, and are as attractive as they can be given the limitations of the style. David finished securing the drywall, reached out and grabbed Jessica's hand. Come with me for a moment, he said, and she followed him into the next room. The two of them walked over to the fireplace, the same one that Jessica had noticed David staring at the other day. He gently released her hand and walked up the mantel. Look at this. See this groove here in the marble, and see this design. Jessica could see, on close inspection, that each of the small decorations was slightly different. This stuff is all hand-done. There is no prefabrication here, no mass production. Somebody who knew what he was about, by a craftsman who loved his work made this. You can't fake talent, and you can't fake skill. He tilted his head at her, and reached out to her with his voice. I am good at what I do. I make electrical systems work flawlessly, exceeding code, under budget. Pointing to the mantel, he continued, I don't do this. There is no art in what I do. There is no love. Nothing that my father's company builds will last half as long as this house has been standing, not because of the quality of the building, but because they will quickly go out of style and will be knocked down for some new prefabricated, soulless building. Sitting at her desk at work, staring at her current Girl Scout trip story, she knew exactly what David had been talking about in the house the day before. What's up? Is there a problem? Jessica asked as she walked into Bill's office. Emma followed Jessica in the door, and sat down next to the younger woman on the couch. Bill gave Emma an expectant glance, and cleared his throat. Jess, we need to talk to you. Noticing the look of panic in Jessica's face, he quickly assured her everything's okay, nobody is sick or dying or anything. He smiled at the look of relief on her face. You know we have talked about retiring a lot lately. He continued. Well, Emma and I feel that it's time for us to do that. We have always wanted to travel, and there is no way we can do that and run the Sentinel. Jessica nodded, not surprised that the moment had finally arrived. What she heard next, however, was a shock. We want to sell the paper to you, Jess, Emma said. We know that this will be a big step for you, but we both think you are ready for it. But I couldn't. Jessica started, but Bill cut her off with a beaming smile. Yes, you can. We have it all worked out. We know you can't afford to put down any money up front, but we have agreed to finance it with you and the bank. I have it all worked out here how the paper's cash flow will more than make your payments and give you a nice healthy raise. Jessica stared at the two smiling faces, with a growing feeling of sickness in her stomach. This is unexpected, she said uneasily, instantly feeling guilty, as she saw looks of concern replacing the happy glow that had been coming from Bill and Emma. I know this is kind of sudden, but, Bill said, when you work the numbers out, even if things get tight and slow down in the advertising department, you will have no difficulty making your payments. Emma reached out and gently placed her hand on Jessica's knee. Bill and I have put back some money over the years, she said, and we have grown to think of you as the daughter we never had. If we could afford to, we would just give the paper to you, but we can't. We can, however, offer it to you at, let's just say it is a good deal. I don't, Jessica said, unable to put her thoughts into words. Bill gathered the papers he had in front of him and put them in a large envelope. Take these with you, and take a good long look at them. I am sure you will have questions about some of the financials. We will be glad to answer them as best we can. When you feel comfortable you are ready, we will have Kevin draw up the papers. Jessica looked at the envelope that Bill handed her, and turned and walked to the door. She stopped in the doorway, turned back and looked at the two rather confused and concerned faces in the room. You don't know what you mean to me, she said with a shaky voice. I love you both with all of my heart. Hold me, David. I really need a hug. David turned at the sound of Jessica's voice, surprised to see her in the room. Alarmed by the look on her face, he jumped up and was at her side in an instant. Leaning forward, she dissolved into his arms and for a while let the cares of the world fade away. A shy smile curved their lips as they leaned closer, drawn by an invisible force, their hearts pounding in unison. The first touch of their lips was soft and tentative, a delicate exploration of newfound emotions. Time seemed to stand still as they embraced, not just in body but in spirit, two souls finally acknowledging the depth of their connection. Later, as they backed away, David struggled in his desire to be both honest and helpful. I don't know a thing about newspaper finances, Jess, David said while looking at the papers laid out on his makeshift kitchen table. I don't know much about them myself, Jessica said. That's never been my part of the business. I have always just been a reporter and photographer. David pointed at the figure on the bottom line. That really doesn't seem like a lot of money for a successful business, he said. Well, Jessica said, I hear people talking, and the general rule of thumb in the business is that a newspaper is worth the same amount as it grosses annually. David whistled. If that's right, that would make this a very, very good deal. They are not giving it to you, but this deal is pretty darned close. I know, Jessica said with a look of concern. David studied her face, trying to read the thoughts running around inside her mind. It's funny, Jess, you don't look like somebody who has just been given the business opportunity of a lifetime. Jessica walked over and stared out the window. I am so confused, she said. I have been thinking a lot lately about how my life has been changing. I am finally able to make my own choices without having to worry about how it will affect Philip. I have gotten to a point in my life where I can finally do what I want to do. So what do you want to do? David asked. I don't know, she said. Well, that's not really right. I do know some things I don't want to do. I don't want to be tied down to a job that I don't love, and I didn't want to be dating a man I didn't love. She turned around and found David just inches away. She could feel the hotness of his breath on her skin. I think that it's time to move on with my life, she said softly. I don't know how to tell Bill and Emma, but I don't want to buy the paper. And I want you, David, she said, drawing his face down into hers. As they again embraced, both could feel both their passions for each other, as well as a separation caused by Jessica's ongoing issue with her business dilemma. Look, Jess, you know I care, but I'm just not going to be very helpful in this situation. I understand your concerns, but I also know how you feel about them and what they mean to you. Perhaps there's a way around this, an alternative that you haven't considered. Perhaps you could bring in some outside help, somebody who actually knows about these types of. No, that won't work, not with this situation, she said. Jess, I know you think that now, but if you stop and consider, he offered, stopping as he saw the clouds forming on her face. You are not listening to me, David. Jessica spat, fire flying from her eyes. I heard what you said. I just think you are wrong. He said. Yes, they love you, that's obvious to see from their offer, but you have to tell them no, and you have to tell them right away. How can I tell them no? What am I going to say? Thanks, but no thanks. I would have lost my brother to foster care if it wasn't for Bill and Emma. I owe them everything I have. I love them. I know you do, David said in a calm, clear voice. They know you do, too. They offered this to you because they thought they were helping you out. They obviously want you to be happy, and if they knew you would not be happy if you owned the paper, then they wouldn't want you to have it. You have to be honest with them and tell them. That's easy for you to say, she said. She looked around the house. If you are so big on explanations, why don't you tell me why you are doing all of this? I have put in a lot of work here. I deserve to know the truth. David leaned back against the windowsill and collected his thoughts. You are right. You do deserve to know the whole story. And Bill and Emma deserve to know the whole story. That's it, Jessica rasped. I deserve to know, but you still are not going to tell me. I am going to tell you when I can find the words. David replied softly. Jessica walked towards the door, stopped and without turning said, It's time you find the words. After she was gone, David walked slowly through the cold, empty house. It is amazing, he thought, how much life there seems to be inside these stripped and barren walls when Jessica is in the room. She was right, it was time for him to tell her what had brought him here. At first he was sure that the reason he had not told her about Susan was that he felt uncomfortable trying to explain something that personal to a stranger. She certainly wasn't a stranger now. He could not let the fear of her reaction keep him silent any longer. Tomorrow, he decided. I will tell her tomorrow.